I figured the clutch kit is, you know, maximum like 150 bucks. Now we can see that there's some wear on these friction pads. Goes in like that. And then we'll try to wrestle all these big pieces of cast iron in. This jackass who did my clutch reused the oil pan gasket. That's why he RTV'd the whole thing. See how this goes. Smooth as a baby's bottom. There's one more thing I want to do before I end this episode, and that is change the fluid in the differential, because the differential hasn't had fluid in a long time. Welcome to part 2. We're going to finish this thing up today. Of course, you must realize, because we have a 9-inch rear end in a 65 F100, you have to pull the axle shafts out to remove the fluid. So we're gonna have to go through that whole process here, starting by removing the wheels. Next, we need to remove the drums. So on some vehicles you have a little screw that holds them on. This doesn't. I replaced these a few years ago, so it's not too bad. To get the axle shaft off, we need to remove 4 bolts behind this flange. Now you can turn your hub around to meet them, and I'm using a 3/4 inch deep socket. Now those bolts were the retainers to keep the, basically it's a retaining flange that keeps the whole axle shaft in. So now we should be able to gently remove this. I say gently as a halfway joking term. Okay. There we go. Okay, let's take the slide hammer off. Now you do have a seal just inside here, so you don't want to leave the full pressure of the bearing on there for very long. And you definitely want to be careful when you're pulling it all the way out that you keep those splines at the end free of that seal. Here's one of the axle shafts here. We have the splines at the top and they engage with the center section that we need to pull out. And down here we have our wheel bearing. Now I replaced this a few years ago when I did the brakes, and this is a bearing retainer. If you're doing the wheel bearings on these axles, do not take an angle grinder and try to cut this retainer off. Take it to a machine shop, have them press it off, because you can damage that axle shaft if you try to remove it with violence. At the bottom you can see that 4-bolt flange that we had to remove, and that actually holds basically the entire wheel and axle shaft in, so it's very important to have that on there. Let's move on to the next axle shaft. I'll do that off camera and we'll get back on that center section. Here's our center section, our third member, whatever you want to call it. We have a ring of bolts around the outside, and once we take those it'll come off. But first I'm going to unhook the U-joint and take the drive shaft off. That'll make it a little bit easier to work on here and not worry about that getting in the way. Hello chickens, what are you doing? One tip I have is, if you have chickens, be sure to pressure wash the chicken poop off the driveway before you start. So I have my catch can down here, and that is a container for, what is it, like a heavy duty truck disc brake. Gonna need a little persuasion, huh? Nope. Well, I don't even know how long this has taken, but I got 1, 2, 3 putty knives jammed into this thing. I had one up here too, and pulled it out to put it down here. It's just really stuck, and you can see it's barely dripping down here. So it's taken way too long, and I'm just gonna have to keep going until it's off. Bet your boots it's going in. Oh, we gotta stop doing this. Ah, gross. Oh man. There we go. Hooray! I got the thing broken loose all around, so there's a gap around the whole thing. Now I'm going to support it underneath, get those nuts out, and try to remove it from the truck. Here we go. We tip it back. Oh, let's get some leverage on this thing. Okay. And there we have it, our 4 to 9 inch center section. A little bit of dirt in it from the gasket stuff. It's just an open diff, it's nothing special, but we'll get this over and see if we can wipe it down. Here's our fluid. Looking pretty dark. Well, I'm not doing any repairs to the differential or axle today. I'm just changing the oil, so just giving it a little bit of degreaser here. And while that kind of drips out of there, I will go and clean up the gaskets, get the gasket off the old surface, and make sure that axle housing is ready for the diff to go back in. I got the gasket pretty well cleaned off with a razor. There's still obviously some stuff on there, but I got a little piece from that palette knife got stuck inside the housing, so I had to shave that off with the razor and a little hammer. That's about it. It's pretty dark in here because of that oil, but it'll clean up, and some new oil will do it good. So we're going to call it good for tonight. Get some crush washers at the store, and we'll come back tomorrow night and go throw this thing back together. It's currently raining, but the work proceeds. I've got the gasket ready, and I marked on it the bottom side and the diff side and the axle side, so I don't hopefully mess it up. And I got a pack of new copper washers, and I have some RTV. I'm just going to do a skim of RTV on the gasket to make sure that seals over the little imperfections I got from removing the diff. So we're gonna put some RTV on this, get it set in there on the studs, and I'll put the diff up on that. Cleaned up both flanges, got the old gasket off. Now we just gotta put this thing on. Holy crap. Oh. No. What's wrong with you? Why are you not going on? Okay, I'm gonna throw a washer on each one. But I'm going to start a couple first. Dab a Loctite. There we go. All right, well, I'll just throw these nuts on and get them torqued down. I think that's all I'm going to do tonight because I'm pretty not happy with being wet, huh? Definitely should not wait for better weather for this kind of stuff. Do it whenever you can and ignore the weather report. We got them all started. Let's go get the torque wrench, check the torque specs, and I will torque these up, and then I am going in. It's really raining out there now. This is kind of miserable, so how do we do this? Let's get this thing on here. I'm gonna attempt a star pattern. It's 30 to 40 foot-pounds. Okay. Okay. That was definitely not the most pleasant experience I've had working on things. But, oh my God, I'm soaked. But it's good to make progress, but it's not always fun to make progress in this way. Let's cover those brakes and we'll call it a night. We'll catch up tomorrow. Well, it rained all day today, but it's dry enough now. I got my axle flange gaskets and they go right here. They were like literally $1.50 each. That's 10720 Velcro. So I'm gonna throw these on the axle shaft. One at a time. I'm not gonna put any RTV on them because there is an oil seal in here that should be sealing it. So it's time to, you know what? I'm gonna put that on here. Got my gasket on the brake side. Let's pick this thing up. I got both flanges cleaned up too. I'm just gonna make sure that that spline shaft stays very far away from the oil seal. And we'll just slide this on. And that's gonna touch in the end. Do something. There we go. Make sure our shaft here lines up. The bearing seats in. These nuts go between 30 and 35 foot-pounds. We'll go do the other side now. Figure I'll finish her off and throw a little anti-seize on the hub here. We'll also throw a little bit on the face of the drum. Keep her from sticking. Let's throw this bad boy on. Or is it a good boy? Time to do the other off camera and we'll move on from there. Here. Well, that about wraps it up. I think it's time to drop it on the floor and take off. Wait, I have two more things to do. I need to hook up the drive shaft and fill it with oil. Let's go. That U-joint was a real pain. One of the needle bearings got stuck in the cap. And then I had to disassemble it to pull it out and fix it. Anyway, I'm going to take this plug and spray it with brake clean, and I'm going to put some PTFE thread sealer on it as well. Make sure it doesn't leak again. Go to the catch pan. Start pumping. See how much it takes. I think she's about good. You know what? I'm not going to drop the truck down. This is close enough to level. think that's about sealed. That's all for the clutch replacement on this. It actually was a pretty simple process and went pretty smoothly aside from the little RTV surprises that the last guy left. Just goes to show one of the reasons that I work on my own cars, because I get to avoid sketchy stuff like that. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I have the F100 as well as the 62 F600, which I've been doing a lot more work to because that's a huge project. I also have the 73 Saab and the Insight and a few others. So keep an eye out, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Press on. Last time I drove this thing without shuttering was, I think, 2016, probably. It was just starting in reverse back then. And I noticed it in reverse first when I was getting into my driveway. But I mean, the thing drove so well. I drove it from Detroit up to Magnum Opus Raleigh in the UP. It's about an hour into the UP. Got some pasties on the way. Beautiful area, and the truck drove great, and it's been a great companion, honestly. I guess the moral of the story is, if you want it done right, do it yourself. It sucks. It takes time. That's old cars for you.